If you ever hear your wife say, "He's a good man, just not ambitious," change the locks. Trust me on this one. I'm Chris Dalton, 39 years old, and I learned this lesson the hard way when my world came crashing down on a rainy Tuesday evening in Cleveland. I'd been working late on a cybersecurity contract for a manufacturing company downtown, the kind of blue-collar IT work that paid the bills but didn't impress anyone at cocktail parties. My wife Fiona had made that abundantly clear over the past year, with her subtle digs about my lack of vision and her increasingly frequent networking events that kept her out until midnight. The house felt different when I walked in that night. Too quiet, too clean. Fiona's laptop was open on the kitchen counter, displaying her work email. She was upstairs in the shower, singing off key like she always did when she was particularly happy about something. I shouldn't have looked, but something about the way she'd left everything so carelessly visible made my Marine-trained instincts kick in. The top email was from Bryce Caraway, her boss at Meridian Financial. The subject line read, "Weekend plans, just us." My stomach dropped as I read the message thread. Months of flirtation, promises of promotions, and increasingly personal exchanges. The most recent message, sent just an hour ago, made my skin crawl. "You're finally dumping him this weekend, right? I'll make it worth your while. The promotion comes with a corner office and a company car. We can celebrate properly." Fiona's response, "Already planned the dinner. Mom's birthday is perfect timing, public, so he can't make a scene. Chris is too polite to cause drama in front of family." I heard the shower shut off upstairs. My hands were shaking as I forwarded the entire email chain to my personal account, then closed the laptop. 23 years of marriage, and she was planning to humiliate me at her mother's birthday dinner like I was some inconvenient business deal to close. But here's the thing about being married to someone for over 2 decades. You learn their weaknesses. And Fiona's biggest weakness was her complete inability to read the fine print on anything, including our prenuptial agreement, which she'd signed without bothering to have her own lawyer review. My father had been a paranoid man, convinced that anyone marrying into our modest family was after money we didn't even have. The prenup he'd insisted on included what he called a compensation clause. If either party initiated divorce proceedings due to infidelity, they owed the other party 5 years of their current salary plus a $50,000 penalty. At the time, we'd both laughed about it. Fiona made twice what I did, and the idea of either of us cheating seemed ridiculous. Now, as I listened to her humming happily upstairs while planning my public humiliation, that clause looked like the best investment my father ever made. I spent the rest of the evening acting normal, making dinner conversation about her day, while she lied smoothly about working late on quarterly reports. She was good at it, I had to admit. If I hadn't seen those emails, I would have believed every word. "So your mom's birthday dinner is Saturday?" I asked, cutting into my steak. "Yes, at Chez Laurent, 7 o'clock. She smiled that practiced smile she used with clients. "The whole family will be there. Tosh and Kim are coming too." Of course they were. Fiona's 2 best friends who'd been enabling her behavior for months. I'd overheard enough of their phone conversations to know they thought I was holding her back, that she deserved better than a guy who fixes computers. "Sounds nice," I said. "I'll wear my good suit. That would be perfect, honey." The endearment sounded hollow now that I knew what she was planning. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling while Fiona slept peacefully beside me, probably dreaming about her corner office and company car. I thought about confronting her, demanding an explanation, maybe even begging her to reconsider. But then I remembered something my drill sergeant used to say: "Never interrupt your enemy when they're making a mistake." Fiona was about to make a very expensive mistake. Saturday evening arrived with the kind of cold October rain that makes everything in Cleveland look gray and miserable. I put on my best suit, a charcoal gray number I'd bought for my brother Dave's wedding 3 years ago, and drove Fiona to Chez Laurent in comfortable silence. She looked beautiful, I had to admit. The black dress that hugged her curves, her auburn hair styled in that sophisticated updo she wore to important business meetings. She was dressed for battle, even if I was the only one who knew it. "You seem nervous," I said as we walked into the restaurant. "Just want everything to be perfect for Mom," she replied, but I caught her checking her phone. Probably a last-minute pep talk from Bryce or her enabler friends. The private dining room was already full when we arrived. Margaret, Fiona's mother, held court at the head of the table in her usual imperious fashion. At 68, she still carried herself like the society queen she'd never quite managed to become, despite marrying 3 progressively wealthier men. "Christopher," she said, offering her cheek for the obligatory kiss. "How nice that you could make it." As if I might have skipped my mother-in-law's 70th birthday. But Margaret had never liked me, viewing my middle-class background and practical career as evidence of her daughter's poor judgment. Tasha and Kim were already seated, whispering together like schoolgirls. Tasha, a real estate agent who specialized in gossip as much as property sales, gave me a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Kim, recently divorced and bitter about it, barely acknowledged my presence. "Chris!" My brother Dave appeared at my elbow, looking uncomfortable in his dress uniform. As a Cleveland police sergeant, he usually avoided family gatherings, but he'd made an exception for Margaret's milestone birthday. "How are you holding up?" Something in his tone made me look at him sharply. "What do you mean?" "Nothing, just... you seem tense." He glanced around the room. "Everything okay at home?" Before I could answer, Fiona clinked her wine glass with her knife, calling for attention. The room fell silent as she stood, radiant under the chandelier lighting. "I wanted to take a moment before dinner to thank everyone for being here to celebrate Mom's special day," she began, her voice carrying that confident tone she used for boardroom presentations. "Family means everything, and I'm so grateful to have all of you in my life." She paused, her eyes finding mine across the table. For just a moment, I saw a flicker of something. Guilt, maybe, or regret. Then it was gone, replaced by cold determination. Which is why I wanted to share some important news with the people who matter most to me. Another pause, perfectly timed for maximum impact. "Chris and I are getting divorced." The silence that followed was deafening. Margaret's fork clattered against her plate. Tasha's eyes went wide with what looked like genuine surprise, despite her obvious prior knowledge. Kim actually smiled. "I've realized that I can't continue living with someone whose values are so fundamentally different from mine," Fiona continued, her voice steady. "I need a partner who shares my ambition, my drive to succeed, someone who understands that sometimes you have to take risks to get what you want in life." I felt every eye in the room turn to me, waiting for my reaction. The old Chris might have protested, might have demanded an explanation, or begged for another chance. But I'd had 3 days to prepare for this moment. I stood slowly, straightening my tie. "Well," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the room, "I always wondered what it would be like to be in a soap opera. I just thought I'd be playing the villain." A few nervous chuckles rippled through the room. Margaret looked scandalized. "You're taking this very well," Fiona said, and I could hear the uncertainty creeping into her voice. This wasn't going according to her script. "Why wouldn't I?" I shrugged. "If you've found someone who makes you happier, someone who can give you everything you want, then I wish you both the best, really." The confusion on her face was worth the months of deception and planning. She'd expected anger, tears, maybe even a public scene that would make her look like the victim. Instead, I was being gracious and supportive. Thank you," she stammered. "I appreciate you being so mature about this. Of course, I've already spoken to my lawyer about the paperwork. Should be pretty straightforward." I raised my wine glass. "To new beginnings." Margaret recovered first, always quick to adapt when social situations required it. "Well, this is certainly unexpected, but if you're both happy with this decision..." "We are," Fiona said quickly. "Very happy." The rest of dinner passed in a blur of awkward conversation and forced normalcy. Tasha kept shooting me sympathetic looks while simultaneously texting someone under the table, probably spreading the news to her network of gossips. Kim made a few pointed comments about how divorce could be liberating for women, especially when they were ready to move up in the world. Dave cornered me by the coat check as we were leaving. "You sure you're okay with this? Because if you need anything..." "I'm fine," I assured him. "Better than fine, actually. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is finding out who people really are." He studied my face with cop's eyes. "You're up to something." "I'm always up to something. That's what makes life interesting." The ride home was silent, except for the rain drumming on the windshield. Fiona stared out the passenger window, probably wondering why her dramatic announcement had gone so smoothly. "So what happens now?" she finally asked, as we pulled into our driveway. "Now we divide up our assets according to the prenup," I said. "My lawyer will call yours on Monday to discuss the details." "Right, the prenup." She nodded absently. I should probably have someone look at that again, make sure I understand all the terms. Probably a good idea, I agreed. You know how legal documents can be, full of surprises. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn sunshine that makes you believe good things are possible. I was finishing my second cup of coffee when my phone rang. The caller ID showed the name of Fiona's divorce attorney, a sharp woman named Patricia Wells who specialized in high-asset divorces. Mr. Dalton, this is Patricia Wells. I'm representing your wife in the divorce proceedings. Good morning, Ms. Wells. I've been expecting your call. I have to ask, why didn't you mention the compensation clause during your wife's initial consultation? I took a sip of coffee, savoring the moment. She didn't ask, and I assumed she'd read the document before signing it 23 years ago. A long pause. Mr. Dalton, are you aware that this clause could entitle you to over $400,000? $437,000 to be precise, plus the $50,000 penalty for initiating proceedings due to adultery. I kept my voice conversational like we were discussing the weather. My lawyer ran the numbers over the weekend. Mr. Dalton, I think there may be some misunderstanding about the grounds for divorce. No misunderstanding at all. I have documentation of my wife's affair with her supervisor, Bryce Caraway. Email correspondence going back 6 months, including explicit discussions of their physical relationship and plans to remove me from the picture. Would you like me to forward copies? Another silence. Longer this time. I'll need to discuss this with my client and get back to you. Of course. Take your time. I hung up and went back to my computer where I was putting the finishing touches on a little project I'd been working on over the weekend. See, one of the advantages of being an IT security specialist is that you understand how information flows in the digital age and how to make sure it flows in the right direction. The video file I'd extracted from Fiona's cloud backup was particularly interesting. Taken at Meridian Financial's quarterly celebration party 2 weeks ago, it showed her sitting on Bryce's lap in his office after hours, both of them clearly intoxicated and very friendly. The timestamp and metadata would hold up in court, and the quality was good enough to identify both parties clearly. I'd already prepared several anonymous USB drives containing the video, along with printed copies of the most incriminating email exchanges. One would go to Meridian's HR department, another to their compliance officer, a third to the local business journal that loved covering corporate scandals. But first, I wanted to give Fiona a chance to see reason. She came home that evening looking like she'd been hit by a truck. Her usually perfect hair was disheveled, her makeup smudged. She found me in the kitchen, calmly preparing dinner. "We need to talk," she said without preamble. "Of course. How was your day?" "Don't." She slammed her purse down on the counter. "Don't act like nothing's happened. Patricia called me. She explained about the clause." "Ah." I continued stirring the pasta sauce. "I was wondering when you'd get around to reading our prenup. Only took you 2 decades. This is insane, Chris. You can't seriously expect me to pay you $500,000? $487,000, I corrected. And it's not what I expect. It's what you agreed to when you signed the contract. I was 25 years old. I didn't understand. You were a business major with a minor in finance, I interrupted. You understood compound interest and liability clauses well enough to graduate summa cum laude. You just didn't think the rules would ever apply to you. She stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Who are you? This isn't like you. Maybe you never knew me as well as you thought. I turned off the burner and faced her. Did you really think I wouldn't find out about Bryce? Did you think I was that stupid? How long have you known? Long enough. Long enough to document everything. Long enough to prepare for your little performance at your mother's birthday dinner. I smiled, though I have to admit the public humiliation was a nice touch. Very theatrical. Chris, please, we can work this out. We don't have to involve lawyers and courts. We can be civilized about this. You mean the way you were civilized when you planned to dump me in front of our family and friends? The way you were civilized when you spent months lying to my face while screwing your boss? It's not like that. It's exactly like that. I pulled out my phone and showed her the video I'd recovered. Recognize this? Her face went white as she watched herself grinding against Bryce in his office chair, his hands roaming freely while she whispered things that definitely weren't business-related. Where did you get this? Your cloud backup. You really should be more careful with your digital security. I've been telling you that for years. You can't use this. It's private. Actually, It was taken on company property using company equipment, which makes it subject to workplace maltreatment policies. I'm sure HR will find it very interesting. You bastard. The mask was finally slipping, revealing the cold calculation underneath. You're going to destroy my career over this? I'm not going to destroy anything. You did that all by yourself when you decided to trade up. I pocketed the phone. I'm just making sure you honor your commitments. And if I refuse, then my lawyer files the papers tomorrow, along with all the evidence. The video goes to your company's board of directors, their biggest clients, and every business publication in the city. Your affair becomes public record, your promotion disappears, and you still owe me every penny. She sank into a chair, the fight going out of her. I can't pay that much. Even with the promotion, it would take me years. Then you probably shouldn't have cheated on your husband. I went back to making dinner. You're welcome to stay for pasta. It's your favorite, the recipe your grandmother taught me. She looked at me with something approaching hatred. I don't know you anymore. Sure you do. I'm still the same guy who fixed your computer when it crashed, who remembered your coffee order every morning, who listened to you complain about your job for 20 years. I met her eyes. I'm just not your doormat anymore. The next morning, I woke up to an empty house. Fiona had packed a bag sometime after midnight and left without a word. I found a note on the kitchen counter. Staying at Kim's until we figure this out. Don't contact me unless it's through lawyers. Fair enough. I had work to do anyway. My first stop was Pete's Tavern, a dive bar near the docks where my friend Pete Sullivan held court behind a scarred wooden bar that had seen better decades. Pete was ex-police, like my brother Dave, and he had a network of contacts that stretched throughout the city. You look like heck, Pete said as I settled onto a bar stool at 10 in the morning. Thanks, coffee please. The strong stuff. He poured from a pot that looked like it could strip paint. Heard about you and Fee. Word travels fast in this town. Let me guess. Tasha's been making the rounds. Among others. Story is, you took it pretty well. Too well, if you ask me. He studied my face with the same cop instincts my brother had. What's the play? I told him about the prenup, the evidence, and Fiona's reaction. Pete whistled low. $500,000, that's serious money. It's not about the money, I said, though that wasn't entirely true, and it's about accountability. She thought she could humiliate me and walk away clean, and now she's finding out different. Pete grinned. I like it. What do you need from me? Information. Bryce Caraway. What do you know about him? Old Cleveland money. Family's been in banking for 3 generations. Married to some socialite named Sylvia, couple of kids in private school. Pete wiped down a glass. Word is, he's got a gambling problem. Poker games in the back rooms of some very expensive establishments. Interesting. What else? His wife's got money of her own. Fashion business, I think. If she found out about his extracurricular activities, it could get expensive for him real quick. I made a mental note to research Sylvia Caraway. If Bryce was going to help destroy my marriage, it seemed only fair to return the favor. My phone buzzed with a text from Dave. Need to talk. Meet me at the usual place. The usual place was a diner near police headquarters where Dave grabbed lunch between shifts. I found him in a back booth, looking serious. We have a problem, he said without preamble. What kind of problem? The kind where 2 guys in expensive suits showed up at my precinct asking questions about you. Wanted to know if you had any history of violence, any arrests, any reason to consider you a threat. I felt a chill run down my spine. What did you tell them? The truth, that you're a pain in the A, but you've never hurt anybody. But Chris, these weren't cops. They were private investigators, and they were asking the kind of questions that suggest someone's building a case against you. Fiona's trying to flip the script, make me look like the dangerous one. That's what I figured. You need to be careful. If they can't find dirt on you, they might try to manufacture some. As if on cue, my phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Dalton, this is Victor Reyes with Apex Security. I understand you might be in need of our services. I looked at Dave, who nodded. How did you get this number? Your brother gave it to me. He thought you might benefit from some personal protection while your domestic situation gets sorted out. I'll call you back, I said, hanging up. Victor's good people, Dave assured me. Ex-boxer, ex-military, runs a clean operation. If someone's planning to cause you trouble, he'll see it coming. That afternoon, I met Victor at a coffee shop downtown. He was exactly what you'd expect from an ex-boxer. built like a brick wall with hands that looked like they could crush walnuts. But his eyes were intelligent, alert. "Your brother filled me in on the basics," he said. "Messy divorce, powerful people involved, potential for escalation. I don't think it'll come to violence, Mr. Dalton. You just cost some very wealthy, very connected people a lot of money and embarrassment. In my experience, that's exactly when things get violent." He was right, of course. I hired him on the spot. That evening, I was working in my home office when Victor knocked on the door. "We've got company," he said quietly. I looked out the window and saw a black sedan parked across the street. Two men sat in the front seat, making no effort to hide their surveillance. "How long have they been there?" "About an hour. They're not very good at this." "What do you think they want?" "To intimidate you, make you feel watched, paranoid. It's psychological warfare." Victor smiled grimly. "Want me to go introduce myself?" "Not yet. Let's see what their next move is." I didn't have to wait long. The next morning, I found my car's tires slashed and a note tucked under the windshield wiper. "Drop the claims or things get worse." I called Dave first, then my lawyer. The police report was filed within an hour, complete with photos of the damage and the threatening note. My lawyer assured me it would only strengthen our case. But that afternoon, things escalated. I was walking back from the grocery store when a van pulled up beside me. Two men jumped out. Not the same ones from the sedan, but cut from the same cloth. Expensive suits, cold eyes, the kind of muscle that wealthy people hired when they needed problems solved quietly. "Mr. Dalton," the larger one stepped forward. "We need to have a conversation." "I don't think so," I said, backing toward the busy street. It wasn't a request. That's when my Marine training kicked in. The first guy reached for my arm, and I broke his nose with an elbow strike that sent crimson spraying across his white shirt. The second one came at me with what looked like a blackjack, but I was already moving, using his momentum to send him sprawling into the side of their van. "Gentlemen," I said, breathing hard but still standing, "you might want to reconsider your career choices." They scrambled back into the van and sped off, leaving me with skinned knuckles and a very clear message. Fiona and her friends were playing for keeps. I called Victor, who arrived within minutes along with a police cruiser that Dave had dispatched. "This changes things," Victor said as we gave our statements. "They're not just trying to intimidate you anymore. They're trying to hurt you. What do you recommend?" "We go on the offensive, find out who sent them, and make it clear that you're not as helpless as they think." That night, as I sat in my living room with Victor keeping watch, I realized that Fiona had made a critical error. She'd escalated this from a legal dispute into something much more personal. And if she wanted a war, I was prepared to give her one. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Sylvia Caraway stood on my doorstep at 8 a.m. sharp, looking like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine despite the early hour. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, with the kind of understated elegance that comes from old money and good breeding. "Mr. Dalton, I'm Sylvia Caraway. I believe we need to talk." I invited her in, curious about what Bryce's wife wanted with me. She declined coffee but accepted a seat in my living room, perching on the edge of the sofa like she might need to flee at any moment. "I know about my husband's affair with your wife," she said without preamble. "I've known for months. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you?" She studied my face. "Because from what I understand, you're planning to take them both for everything they're worth. I'm planning to enforce a legal contract that my wife signed. What happens to your husband is between you and him." "My husband is an idiot," she said flatly. "But he's an idiot with access to my family's money, and I won't let him bankrupt us over some midlife crisis. What do you want from me, Mrs. Caraway?" "Information, evidence, ammunition." She opened her purse and pulled out a check. "I'm prepared to pay for it." I looked at the check. $50,000 made out to cash. "You want me to help you divorce your husband? I want you to help me destroy him before he destroys me." She leaned forward. "Bryce thinks he's untouchable because of his family connections. He's about to learn otherwise." We spent the next hour going over everything I knew about the affair. Sylvia took notes in a leather-bound planner, asking sharp questions about dates, locations, and witnesses. She was clearly no stranger to corporate warfare. "There's something else you should know," she said as she prepared to leave. "Bryce has been using company funds to pay for hotel rooms, dinners, gifts for your wife. If the board finds out, it won't just cost him his job. It could mean criminal charges. How do you know this? Because I've been investigating him for months. I hired a private detective the first time I smelled perfume on his shirts. She smiled coldly. The same detective who's been following you, actually. I thought you should know that those men who attacked you yesterday, they weren't working for your wife. They were working for my husband. The pieces clicked into place. Bryce wasn't just trying to steal my wife. He was trying to eliminate me as a threat to his comfortable life. What happens now? I asked. Now we make them both pay for underestimating us. After Sylvia left, I called my lawyer and filled him in on the new developments. The embezzlement angle was particularly interesting. It meant we could potentially pursue criminal charges in addition to the civil case. But first, I had a more immediate problem to deal with. That afternoon, Fiona showed up at the house with Tasha and Kim in tow, clearly expecting to intimidate me through sheer numbers. They found me in the garage, working on my motorcycle with Victor standing nearby. We need to talk, Fiona announced. We've talked. You made your position clear. This is ridiculous, Chris. You're destroying both our lives over wounded pride. I'm enforcing a contract. If that destroys your life, maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to cheat. Tasha stepped forward, her real estate agent's smile firmly in place, and Chris, honey, be reasonable. Fee made a mistake, but she doesn't deserve to lose everything over it. She's not losing everything. She's paying the penalty she agreed to pay if she cheated on me. But $500,000, Kim started, is exactly what she owes me according to the prenup she signed. I looked at each of them in turn. Did you three really think you could gang up on me and I'd just roll over? We're trying to help, Tasha insisted. No, you're trying to enable. You've been encouraging Fiona's affair for months, telling her she deserves better, that I'm holding her back. Well, congratulations, you got what you wanted. Fiona's mask slipped. You self-righteous bastard. Do you think you're so much better than us? I think I'm someone who honors his commitments. Apparently, that makes me unique in this group. You want to play hardball? Her eyes glittered with malice. Fine. We'll see how righteous you feel when everyone knows what kind of man you really are. They left in a flurry of angry whispers and slammed car doors. Victor watched them go with professional interest. They're planning something, he observed. Let them plan. I'm tired of playing defense. That evening, I put my own plan into motion. The USB drives I'd prepared went to their intended recipients via anonymous courier. The video of Fiona and Bryce would be in the hands of Meridian Financial's board of directors by morning, along with printed copies of their most incriminating email exchanges. But I wasn't done. Using contacts from my IT work, I'd managed to trace the source of the threats and maltreatment back to a private investigation firm that specialized in reputation management, corporate speak for intimidation and blackmail. A few carefully placed phone calls to their other clients, along with evidence of their illegal activities, would shut them down by the end of the week. The next morning, my phone started ringing early. First my lawyer, then Pete, then Dave. The story was spreading through Cleveland's business community like wildfire. Bryce Caraway, scion of one of the city's oldest banking families, caught embezzling company funds to finance an affair with a subordinate. By noon, the local business journal had picked up the story. By evening, it was trending on social media. Fiona's carefully crafted professional image was in ruins, and Bryce was facing both termination and criminal charges. But they weren't done fighting. That night, Victor woke me from a sound sleep. We've got trouble, he said quietly. I looked out my bedroom window and saw flames. Someone had set my garage on fire. We called the fire department and police, but by the time they arrived, my motorcycle and most of my tools were destroyed. The arson investigator found traces of accelerant and evidence that the fire had been deliberately set. This is escalating fast, Dave said as we surveyed the damage. They're not just trying to intimidate you anymore. They're trying to destroy your property. Then it's time to end this, I said. The next day, I made a decision that would change everything. Instead of waiting for them to make the next move, I was going to force a final confrontation on my terms. I called Fiona and arranged to meet her at a neutral location, the coffee shop where we'd had our first date 24 years ago. She arrived with Kim as backup, both of them looking like they hadn't slept in days. You burned down my garage, I said without preamble. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you don't. Just like you don't know about the private investigators, or the men who tried to attack me, or the threatening notes. Chris, please. This has gone too far. We're both destroying each other. No, Fiona. You destroyed our marriage. You destroyed your career. You destroyed any chance we had of ending this civilly. I leaned forward. But I'm prepared to offer you one last chance. What kind of chance? Drop the maltreatment. Pay what you owe according to the prenup. Disappear from my life quietly. I met her eyes. Do that, and I won't press criminal charges for the arson, the attack, or the intimidation. And if I don't, then we finish this the hard way. She looked at Kim, who shook her head slightly. Bad advice from a bad friend. Go to heck, Chris, we're not backing down. Then neither am I. As they left, I pulled out my phone and made a call I'd been dreading. But if Fiona wanted to escalate this to the nuclear level, I was prepared to push the button. Sylvia, it's Chris Dalton. Are you ready to go to war? The showdown came sooner than I expected. 3 days after my meeting with Fiona, Victor shook me awake at 2 a.m. Someone's trying to break into the house, he whispered. I grabbed the baseball bat I kept beside my bed and followed him to the living room window. A figure in dark clothing was working on the back door with what looked like lockpicks. Police, I asked. Already called, but they're 10 minutes out, and this guy's almost through the lock. That's when I recognized the silhouette. Bryce Caraway, drunk and desperate, trying to break into my house with a set of lockpicks he'd probably bought online. He's not here to steal anything, I realized. He's here to plant evidence. Make it look like I'm the one who's been escalating things. Victor nodded grimly. What's the play? We give him exactly what he's looking for. I'd been preparing for this possibility ever since Sylvia warned me about her husband's desperation. The house was equipped with security cameras that would record everything, and I'd prepared a few surprises for any unwelcome visitors. Bryce finally got the back door open and stumbled inside, carrying a duffel bag that probably contained whatever evidence he planned to plant. He made it 3 steps into the kitchen before the motion-activated lights blazed on and the security system's recorded message began playing at full volume. Attention! You are trespassing on private property. This break-in is being recorded and transmitted to law enforcement. Please exit immediately or face prosecution. But instead of running, Bryce dropped his bag and pulled out a crowbar. He was too drunk or too desperate to think clearly. Where are you, you son of a witch? He shouted, swinging the crowbar at my kitchen cabinets. You think you can destroy my life? That's when I stepped into the kitchen, Victor behind me, both of us clearly visible to the security cameras. Hello, Bryce. I have to say, this is a surprise. Most people make appointments. He spun around, nearly losing his balance. Up close, I could see he was a mess. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his hair disheveled, and his eyes red and glassy from alcohol and lack of sleep. You ruined everything, he slurred. My job, my marriage, my reputation, all because you couldn't handle losing your wife to a better man. A better man wouldn't have to break into someone's house in the middle of the night. Shut up! He swung the crowbar at me, but he was too drunk and too slow. I stepped aside easily and he stumbled into my kitchen island. Bryce, you're drunk and you're trespassing. The police are on their way. If you leave now, we can probably work something out. I'm not leaving until you drop those charges against Fee. She doesn't deserve this. She signed a contract. Actions have consequences. Consequences? He laughed bitterly. You want to talk about consequences? I lost my job today. The board voted to terminate me for cause. No severance, no pension, nothing. And Sylvia's filing for divorce. She's taking everything. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and meant it. I hadn't wanted to destroy his life, just protect my own. No, you're not. You planned this whole thing. You and my witch wife, working together to destroy me. That's when I realized how far gone he was. The alcohol, the stress, the public humiliation. It had pushed him over the edge into genuine delusion. Bryce, listen to me. You need help, professional help. This isn't going to solve anything. It'll solve everything. He raised the crowbar again. With you gone, Fee will drop the divorce. We can start over somewhere else. He came at me with the crowbar, but this time I was ready. 20 years of martial arts training kicked in, and I disarmed him with a move that sent the tool skittering across my kitchen floor. He went down hard, hitting his head on the tile. For a moment, I thought he was unconscious. Then he started crying. I've lost everything, he sobbed. My job, my family, my reputation. All for what? A woman who doesn't even love me? Victor and I exchanged glances. This wasn't the dangerous criminal we'd been expecting. This was a broken man who'd made a series of terrible decisions and was now facing the consequences. The police arrived a few minutes later, followed by an ambulance. Bryce was arrested for breaking and entering, attack with a tool, and criminal mischief. The duffel bag he'd brought contained planted evidence, pills, stolen property, and forged documents that were supposed to make me look like a criminal. But the security cameras had recorded everything, including his confession about planting the evidence. "This should wrap up your case pretty nicely," Dave said as we watched the ambulance take Bryce away. "Between this and the embezzlement charges, he's looking at serious prison time. What about Fiona? That depends on how much she knew about tonight. If she was involved in planning this," he shrugged, "conspiracy charges are a possibility." The next morning, I got a call from Patricia Wells, Fiona's lawyer. "Mr. Dalton, my client would like to discuss a settlement." "I'm listening." "She's prepared to honor the terms of the prenuptial agreement in full. $487,000 paid over 5 years with interest. And in return, you don't press charges for the maltreatment and property damage." I thought about it. Fiona had made terrible choices, but she wasn't the one who'd broken into my house with a crowbar. And honestly, I was tired of fighting. "Deal," said. But I want it in writing, signed and notarized within 48 hours. Agreed. 2 days later, I sat in my lawyer's office as Fiona signed the settlement agreement. She looked older than her 36 years, worn down by months of stress and public humiliation. "I'm sorry," she said quietly as she handed over the signed documents. "For all of it. I never meant for things to go this far." "I know," I said, and I did know. Fiona wasn't evil, just selfish and short-sighted. She'd made a series of bad decisions that had spiraled out of control. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now you honor this agreement, and we both try to rebuild our lives." She nodded and left without another word. I never saw her again. 6 months later, I was sitting on the deck of my new house, smaller than the one I'd shared with Fiona, but entirely mine, when Dave stopped by with a beer and an update. "Bryce got 18 months, he said. "Could have been worse if he hadn't pled guilty." "What about his wife, Sylvia?" "She took him for everything in the divorce. Last I heard, she was dating some tech billionaire from Silicon Valley." "And Fiona?" "Working for a small accounting firm downtown. Tasha and Kim don't return her calls anymore. Funny how quickly fair-weather friends disappear when the weather turns bad." I thought about that as I watched the sunset over Lake Erie. 23 years of marriage, gone. A life I'd built, destroyed. But in its place, something new was growing. Something that belonged entirely to me. My phone buzzed with a text from Pete. "Trivia night at the bar. You in?" I finished my beer and stood up. "Yeah," I texted back. "I'm in." For the first time in years, I felt truly free.